Chained and scared, Lila Mae stood on the saloon porch as the sheriff prepared to sell her like property. Her family was gone. Her land was taken. And now, the townspeople gathered to watch her fate decided by the highest bid. She had no voice, no help, no way out. Then, just before the sheriff could begin, a silent figure stepped out of the crowd. An Apache warrior, tall and calm, with fire in his eyes. She thought no one would stand for her, but someone did. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe that fate always finds a way. The sun rose over Bitter Creek, a small town with dusty streets and wooden buildings. People filled the town square, their voices low and filled with curiosity. Today was not a normal day. Today, Lila Mae Thompson stood on the porch of the old saloon with chains on her wrists. Her eyes were steady, but her heart was heavy. Lila was once full of life. She was the daughter of a respected rancher. Her family had a large ranch with cattle and fields that stretched far and wide. But those days were gone. Her father had taught her the value of hard work. He believed in kindness and honesty. He was a good man, but life had been cruel to them. It all started with a drought. The land became dry, and the cattle suffered. Thieves took what little they had left, and her father struggled to keep the ranch afloat. Then her father passed away suddenly, leaving Lila and her mother alone. Her mother fell ill soon after and died, leaving Lila to fend for herself. Lila tried to keep the ranch going. She worked hard, doing everything she could to pay off their debts. But she was young and the debts were many. The community that once respected her family turned away. They whispered behind her back, and she felt their judging eyes on her. Sheriff Jeb Calhoun saw an opportunity. He was a man who enjoyed power. He wore his badge like a crown, and he had his eyes on Lila. He knew about her debts and saw a way to exploit her situation. To him, Lila was not a person in need. She was a way to show his authority. Now, the town gathered to see Lila auctioned off. It was a legal way to pay her debts, but to Lila it felt like being sold like cattle. She stood tall on the porch, her spirit unbroken even though her body was bound. She refused to cry or beg. She would face this moment with dignity. As the sheriff stepped forward to announce the auction, the crowd grew silent. They were eager to see what would happen next. Sheriff Calhoun, with his broad shoulders and cold eyes, looked over the crowd. He enjoyed the attention and the power he held over Lila. Just then, a figure appeared at the edge of the crowd. He was tall and strong, an Apache warrior named Chayton. His presence was commanding, much like the mountains that surrounded Bitter Creek. He stood still, his eyes on Lila. People in the crowd noticed him and whispered among themselves. Who was this man, and why was he here? Chayton had come a long way. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He carried the weight of his people's history on his shoulders. Chayton had his reasons for being in Bitter Creek, and they were about to collide with Lila's story. Lila noticed Chayton, too. She didn't know who he was, but his presence gave her a sense of calm. It was as if he understood her struggle, even though they had never met. There was something in his eyes, a strength that resonated with her own. The sheriff began the auction. His voice was loud and clear as he outlined Lila's debts. He spoke as if she was just another piece of property. The townsfolk watched, some with pity, others with indifference. To them, this was just another day in Bitter Creek, but to Lila this was her life. Her future was uncertain, and she could feel the weight of the chains on her wrists. She glanced at Chayton again. He was still watching her, and she felt a connection, even if she didn't understand it. Chayton had his own mission. He was searching for his sister, taken by settlers years ago. The whispers of a girl being auctioned had drawn him here, reminding him of his sister's fate. He hadn't come to Bitter Creek with the intention of intervening, but seeing Lila, seeing her strength and determination, stirred something within him. The auction continued. The sheriff paused, looking smug as he waited for the first bid. But before anyone could speak, Chayton stepped forward. The crowd hushed, curiosity and fear mingling in their eyes. Who was this warrior and what did he want? Chayton's presence commanded silence. His gaze met Lila's, and in that moment, an understanding passed between them. He was not here to buy her freedom in the traditional sense. He was here to stand against the injustice unfolding before him. Sheriff Calhoun's eyes narrowed. He didn't like being challenged, especially by someone like Chayton. But the crowd was watching, and he couldn't ignore the warrior's presence. Chayton declared his intention to bid for Lila. His voice was firm and his purpose clear. The crowd was shocked. An Apache warrior bidding for a white girl was unheard of. Some murmured in disapproval, others in surprise. But Chayton was not concerned with their opinions. He was focused on what he saw in Lila, a spirit that would not be broken. The sheriff was furious. He tried to intimidate Chayton, but the warrior stood his ground. The tension in the air was palpable. It was a standoff between two forces, one of justice and one of oppression. The townspeople watched closely, some beginning to question their own role in this event. As the auction reached its peak, a distraction occurred. Seemed like a chance, a twist of fate. The sheriff's attention was diverted for just a moment. Lila and Chayton seized the opportunity. Their eyes met again, and they moved as one. In the chaos that followed, they fled the town. Sheriff Calhoun's men tried to give chase, but Chayton's knowledge of the land and Lila's determination kept them ahead. They found refuge in the wilderness, away from the eyes of the townspeople. The escape was dangerous, but they were free, at least for now. Lila's chains were gone, but the journey was just beginning. She and Chayton were strangers, yet something connected them. Their fates were now intertwined, leading them into an uncertain future. The town of Bitter Creek was left behind, its people unsure of what they had witnessed. The sun set on a day that had changed everything for Lila and Chayton. They were no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun dipped below the horizon as Lila and Chayton found a place to rest in the safety of the wilderness. The air was cooler here, and the trees offered shelter from prying eyes. Lila felt the weight of the day lift slightly, but her mind was still racing. She sat on a fallen log, her wrists sore from the chains she had worn. Chayton moved quietly nearby, gathering wood for a small fire. As the fire crackled to life, Lila's thoughts drifted back to her past. She had grown up on her family's ranch, a place alive with the sounds of cattle and the rustling of wheat in the fields. Her father, a man of strong principles, had taught her everything she knew about ranch work. He believed in hard work and honesty, values he instilled in Lila from a young age. She remembered the days when the ranch was full of life. Her father would ride out early in the morning, and she would follow him, eager to learn. Her mother, gentle and kind, would prepare meals and tend to the small garden by the house. Lila was happy then, surrounded by love and open spaces. But then came the drought. The land became dry, and the grass turned brown. The cattle suffered, and the ranch struggled. Her father worked tirelessly, trying to keep everything going. But then, thieves took what little they had left. They came in the night, stealing cattle and leaving the fences broken. Her father was heartbroken, but he kept going. He believed things would get better. But then he fell ill suddenly and died, leaving Lila and her mother to fend for themselves. The loss was a heavy blow, one that left a deep void in their lives. Her mother tried to keep the ranch going, but her health was failing. Soon, she too succumbed to illness, leaving Lila alone. Lila was determined to keep the ranch, to honor her parents' memory. She worked hard, doing everything she could to pay off the debts that had piled up. But the community that once respected her family turned their backs. They whispered about her, judging her for the debts she could not pay. She felt their eyes on her whenever she went into town. It was like being a stranger in her own home. Sheriff Jeb Calhoun saw her struggles. He was a man who enjoyed power, who saw people as pawns in his game. He knew about her debts and saw a way to exploit her vulnerability. To him, Lila was not a person in need. She was an opportunity. Lila remembered the day the sheriff came to the ranch. He spoke in a calm voice, but his eyes were cold. He told her she had to pay her debts or face the consequences. Lila had no money, no way to pay. The sheriff suggested the auction as a way to settle her debts. It was legal, he said, but to Lila it felt like a betrayal. Now, sitting by the fire, she felt the sting of those memories. But she was no longer alone. Chayton sat across from her, his eyes watching the flames. He was a man of few words, but his presence was reassuring. Lila felt a sense of calm in his company. Chayton had his reasons for being in Bitter Creek. He had come from the distant Apache lands, following whispers and rumors. His sister had been taken by settlers years ago, and he had been searching for her ever since. The news of a girl being auctioned had drawn him to the town, reminding him of his sister's fate. Though he had come to Bitter Creek with a different purpose, seeing Lila had stirred something within him. Her strength and determination resonated with him. He saw a reflection of his own struggles in her eyes. They were two people from different worlds, yet their paths had crossed at the right moment. As the fire burned low, Lila shared her story with Chayton. She spoke of her family, their ranch, and the losses she had endured. Chayton listened, his expression thoughtful. He understood loss and the burden of carrying on despite it. In turn, Chayton spoke of his sister. She had been taken when she was young, and he had spent years searching for her. He had traveled far, listening for any word of her. His journey had been long and filled with uncertainty, but he would not give up. Their stories, though different, shared a common thread of resilience. They had both faced hardships and loss, yet they continued to move forward. Together, they found solace in their shared experiences. The night grew darker, and the stars appeared overhead. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Lila and Chayton sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. Despite the uncertainty of their situation, there was a sense of peace between them. Lila knew that their journey was just beginning. The wilderness was vast, and the path ahead was unclear, but she felt stronger knowing she was not alone. Chayton's presence was a reminder that there was still hope, even in the darkest of times. As the fire died down, Lila lay back on the ground, the stars above her. She felt the cool earth beneath her, the scent of pine in the air. It was a reminder of the land she loved, the land she had fought to keep. Her heart ached for what she had lost, but she knew she could not dwell on it forever. Chayton, too, lay back, his gaze fixed on the sky. He thought of his sister, of the journey ahead. He knew the search would be difficult, but he was determined to find her. The bond he shared with Lila was unexpected, but it gave him strength. As they drifted into sleep, the forest around them stood silent and still. The night was a blanket of calm, wrapping them in its embrace. Despite the challenges they faced, there was a sense of hope between them, a hope that tomorrow would bring new possibilities. The journey was far from over, but Lila and Chayton were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would find their way through the wilderness, their hearts guided by the memories of those they had lost and the promise of what could be. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting patches of light on the ground. Lila and Chayton awoke to the sounds of birds singing and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. The forest was alive with the promise of a new day. They gathered their belongings, ready to continue their journey. Chayton led the way, his steps sure and steady. He knew this land well, having traveled through it many times. His journey had begun far from Bitter Creek, in the Apache lands where he was born. His people lived in harmony with the land, understanding its rhythms and respecting its power. Chayton was a skilled warrior. He was trained in the ways of his people, learning to hunt, track, and survive in the wild. He carried their history with him, a legacy of strength and resilience. But the burden of his sister's disappearance weighed heavily on his heart. Years ago, settlers had come to their lands, bringing change and conflict. In the chaos, Chayton's sister was taken. She was young, and Chayton was powerless to stop it. Since that day, he had vowed to find her, to bring her home. It was a promise he intended to keep. His journey had taken him far and wide, following whispers and rumors. He had met many people along the way, some kind, others not. Each step brought him closer to the truth, but the path was long and filled with uncertainty. The news of a girl being auctioned in Bitter Creek had reached him through these whispers. It reminded him of his sister, of the fate she might have faced. He had come to see for himself, not knowing what he would find. Meeting Lila had been unexpected, but their encounter had given him a new sense of purpose. As they walked, Chayton shared more of his story with Lila. He spoke of his people, their traditions, and his quest. Lila listened intently, drawn into his world. She felt a deep respect for his determination and the strength it took to continue his search. Lila, in turn, shared her own journey. She spoke of her family, her struggles, and the loss that had shaped her life. Their stories, though different, were connected by a shared resilience. They understood each other's pain and the drive to keep moving forward. The land around them was vast and beautiful. The trees towered above, their leaves whispering in the wind. The path was uneven, but Chayton navigated it with ease. Lila followed, learning to read the signs of the forest, to move with the land rather than against it. Chayton taught her skills she had never learned on the ranch. He showed her how to find food, how to track animals, and how to listen to the forest. Lila was a quick learner, eager to soak up the knowledge he offered. She found strength in the skills she acquired, a confidence she hadn't felt in a long time. Their journey was not without its challenges. The forest was vast, and the path was sometimes difficult. But Chayton was patient, guiding Lila with a steady hand. Together, they made a good team, each complementing the other's strengths. As they traveled, they spoke of their hopes and dreams. Chayton longed to find his sister, to bring her back to their people. He dreamed of a day when they could live in peace, free from the threat of settlers and conflict. Lila dreamed of rebuilding her family's ranch, of restoring the land to its former glory. She wanted to keep her parents' legacy alive, to honor their memory by continuing their work. She knew it would be difficult, but she was determined to try. Their conversations were filled with laughter and mutual respect. They found comfort in each other's company, a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. The challenges they faced only served to bring them closer together. One evening, as they set up camp, Chayton spoke of his sister again. He described her as a spirited child, full of life and curiosity. Lila could see the pain in his eyes, the longing to see her again. She placed a reassuring hand on his arm, offering silent support. Chayton nodded, grateful for her presence. He knew the search would be difficult, but he was not alone. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead. The path was long, but they had each other, and that made all the difference. As the fire crackled and the stars appeared overhead, Lila and Chayton sat in companionable silence. The forest was quiet around them, a peaceful backdrop to their thoughts. They were two souls on a journey, each seeking answers in a world filled with uncertainty. Their bond was unexpected, but it was strong. It was built on shared experiences, on understanding and respect. They were no longer strangers, but friends bound by a common purpose. They would face the challenges ahead together, their hearts guided by hope and determination. The night was calm, the air cool and refreshing. Lila lay back, watching the stars above. She felt a sense of peace, a calm she hadn't known in a long time. Chayton was nearby, his presence a comforting reminder that she was not alone. As they drifted into sleep, the forest wrapped them in its embrace. The journey was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would find their way, guided by the memories of those they had lost and the promise of what could be. In the stillness of the night, the world seemed full of possibilities. Lila and Chayton were on a journey of healing and discovery, their paths intertwined by fate. They would face the dawn with courage, ready to continue their search for answers and for hope. The morning light broke through the trees, painting the ground with soft, golden hues. Lila and Chayton awoke to another day of their journey. They packed their belongings, ready to move on. Today was the day they would reach the edge of the forest and see what lay beyond. The path through the forest had been long and winding. It had tested their strength and resolve, but Lila felt stronger for it. She had learned much from Chayton, and each day brought new challenges and lessons. The wild had become a part of her, a place where she felt free. As they walked, the trees began to thin, and the land opened up before them. The forest gave way to rolling hills and open skies. It was a different kind of beauty, vast and expansive. Lila took a moment to take it all in, feeling the wind on her face and the sun on her back. The day of the auction felt like a distant memory, but the events of that day still lingered in her mind. Lila thought of the townspeople, of the way they had watched her with eyes that judged and pitied. She wondered if they had questioned their role in what had happened, or if they had simply moved on, unaffected by the events. Chayton walked beside her, his gaze steady and focused. He was a man on a mission, and nothing would deter him from his path. Lila admired his strength and determination, qualities she saw mirrored in herself. They were two people from different worlds, yet their goals were aligned. As they reached the top of a hill, they saw the town of Bitter Creek in the distance. It looked small and insignificant from here, a collection of wooden buildings against the backdrop of the land. Lila felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a sense of closure. Sheriff Calhoun's face flashed in her mind. He was a man who thrived on power, who saw people as tools for his own gain. She knew he would not easily forget their escape, and the threat of his pursuit lingered in the back of her mind. But today was not about fear. Today was about moving forward. Lila and Chayton continued down the hill, the town fading into the background. They were heading to a place where they hoped to find answers, a settlement rumored to have information about missing people. The journey was long, the sun high in the sky as they walked. The land was unfamiliar to Lila, but Chayton navigated it with ease. He had traveled these paths before, his footsteps guided by the knowledge passed down through generations. As the day wore on, they reached the outskirts of the settlement. It was a bustling place, filled with people from all walks of life. Lila felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew this place held answers, but she was unsure of what they would find. Chayton led the way, his presence commanding respect. People moved aside as they passed, some nodding in recognition. It was clear that Chayton was known here, and his reputation preceded him. They reached a small tavern, a place where travelers gathered to share stories and information. The air was filled with the sounds of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Lila and Chayton found a table in the corner, away from prying eyes. Chayton spoke with the tavern keeper, a man who seemed to know everyone and everything that happened in the settlement. He asked about missing people, about any word of his sister. The tavern keeper listened, nodding thoughtfully. Lila watched, her heart hopeful. She knew how much this meant to Chayton, and she wanted to help in any way she could. She listened carefully as the tavern keeper spoke, sharing what he knew. He spoke of settlers passing through, of people disappearing and never being seen again. He mentioned rumors of camps where people were taken, places where they were forced to work against their will. The descriptions were vague, but it was more information than they had before. Chayton's expression was serious, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. The tavern keeper promised to keep an ear out for any new information, and they thanked him for his help. As they left the tavern, Lila felt a sense of purpose. They were one step closer to finding Chayton's sister, and she was determined to see it through. The settlement was a place of hope and possibility, a place where they could find the answers they sought. The sun was setting as they made their way through the streets, the sky painted with hues of orange and pink. Lila felt a sense of peace as they walked, the weight of the past lifting from her shoulders. They found a place to rest for the night, a small inn on the edge of the settlement. It was a simple place, but it offered shelter and a warm meal. Lila was grateful for the comfort, a welcome change from the nights spent in the forest. As they settled in for the night, Lila and Chayton spoke of their plans. They would continue their search, following the leads they had gathered. The journey would be long, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. Lila knew that the path would not be easy. There would be challenges and dangers, but she felt stronger knowing she was not alone. Chayton was by her side, a constant source of strength and support. Their bond was a testament to the power of resilience and hope. They were two people brought together by fate, their paths intertwined in a journey of healing and discovery. Together, They would face the dawn with courage, ready to continue their search for answers and for hope. The morning light crept into the room where Lila and Chayton had stayed the night. The small inn was quiet, and the air was filled with the scent of breakfast being prepared downstairs. Lila stretched, feeling the comfort of a bed after many nights in the wilderness. She and Chayton had a plan for the day, a continuation of their search. After a simple breakfast, they stepped out into the bustling settlement. The streets were alive with activity, people moving about their daily routines. Lila and Chayton felt a mix of hope and urgency. They were closer to finding answers, but they needed to move quickly. Sheriff Calhoun's threat loomed in the back of Lila's mind. Their first stop was a small trading post, a place where travelers and locals exchanged goods and information. Chayton had heard that some of the traders here might have news of the camps mentioned by the tavern keeper. They entered, scanning the room for anyone who might help. A grizzled old trader sat behind a counter, his eyes sharp and curious. Chayton approached him, asking questions about missing people and the rumors of forced labor camps. The trader listened, nodding slowly as he considered the questions. He spoke in a low voice, sharing what he knew. There were indeed camps, he said, places where people were taken and forced to work. They were run by men who valued profit over human life, exploiting the vulnerable for their gain. The trader mentioned a camp to the north, a place where many were taken but few returned. Lila's heart sank at the thought, but she remained determined. They thanked the trader for his information, leaving the trading post with a clearer sense of direction. They would head north to the camp, in the hopes of finding Chayton's sister or at least learning more about her fate. As they made their way out of the settlement, Lila felt a sense of urgency. Time was of the essence, and they needed to move quickly. The path north was long and fraught with potential dangers, but they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The landscape changed as they traveled, the open fields giving way to rocky terrain. The sun was high in the sky, casting shadows on the ground. Lila and Chayton moved with purpose, their steps sure and steady. As they journeyed, they spoke of their hopes and fears. Chayton shared his longing to see his sister again, to bring her home to their people. Lila spoke of her desire to rebuild her family's ranch, to create a future filled with promise and possibility. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, a connection forged in shared struggle and mutual respect. They were no longer just two people on a journey, but a team working towards a common goal. As the sun began to set, they found a place to camp for the night. The air was cooler here, and the sound of a nearby stream provided a soothing backdrop. They set up a small fire, sharing a simple meal as they rested. But their peace was short-lived. As darkness fell, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The crack of a twig, the murmur of voices. Lila and Chayton exchanged a glance, their senses on high alert. They knew they were not alone. A group of men emerged from the shadows, their faces hidden by the darkness. Lila felt a chill run down her spine. These were no ordinary travelers. Their intentions were clear, and they were not friendly. The leader of the group stepped forward, his voice gruff and commanding. He spoke of ransom and reward, of taking Lila and Chayton back to Sheriff Calhoun. They had been tracked, their escape from Bitter Creek not forgotten. Chayton stood firm, his posture calm and ready. He knew they were outnumbered, but he would not go down without a fight. Lila felt fear rising within her, but she pushed it aside. They had come too far to be captured now. The standoff was tense, the air thick with the threat of violence. Lila and Chayton were surrounded, their options limited. But they were resourceful, and they would not let fear dictate their actions. As the men closed in, Chayton's mind raced. He scanned the area, looking for an opportunity, a way out. Lila was by his side, her eyes filled with determination. They would face this challenge together. Suddenly, a distraction, a noise in the distance, a shout that drew the attention of their captors. It was a chance, a moment of confusion that Chayton and Lila seized with everything they had. They moved quickly, taking advantage of the chaos. Chayton's knowledge of the land proved invaluable, guiding them through the darkness with precision. Lila followed, her heart pounding, her mind focused on escape. The pursuit was relentless, the men giving chase with determination. But Chayton and Lila had the advantage of knowing the land, of moving through it with ease. They pushed forward, their goal clear in their minds. After what felt like hours, the sounds of pursuit faded. Lila and Chayton slowed, their breaths heavy with exertion. They had escaped, but the danger was far from over. They needed to keep moving to stay one step ahead. They found refuge in a hidden grove, a place where they could catch their breath and regroup. The night was still, the stars shining brightly overhead. Lila felt a mix of relief and exhaustion, grateful for their escape, but aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Chayton sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. They had faced a great danger, but they were not defeated. Their bond was stronger than ever, their resolve unshaken. As they rested, Lila felt a renewed sense of purpose. They would continue their search, driven by hope and the promise of a better future. Together, they would find their way, guided by the strength of their bond and the dreams that fueled their journey. The dawn light broke gently over the hidden grove where Lila and Chayton had found refuge. The night had been long, filled with tension and the thrill of their narrow escape. But with the morning came a sense of calm and renewed determination. They had survived another challenge, and now it was time to continue their journey. Lila stretched, feeling the cool morning air on her skin. The events of the previous night played over in her mind. Though exhausted, she was filled with a sense of purpose. She and Chayton had faced danger together, their bond growing stronger with each trial. Now they needed to focus on the path ahead. Chayton was already awake, gathering their belongings and preparing for the day. His movements were deliberate and efficient, a reminder of his skills and experience. He caught Lila's eye and offered a reassuring nod. They were in this together, and that knowledge gave them both strength. As they set off, the landscape around them shifted once more. The rocky terrain gave way to rolling hills and open skies. The air was fresh, and the path ahead was clear. They were heading north, towards the camp that the trader had mentioned. It was a place of danger, but also of potential answers. Their journey was not just about finding Chayton's sister. It was also a journey of discovery and healing. Each step brought them closer to understanding themselves and each other. Lila felt a growing sense of freedom, a shedding of the burdens she had carried for so long. Chayton walked beside her, his presence a constant source of support. He spoke of the land, of the stories passed down through generations of his people. Lila listened, absorbing the wisdom and knowledge he shared. She felt honored to be part of his journey, even in a small way. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they paused to rest by a small stream. The water flowed gently, a soothing sound that eased their minds. Lila splashed her face, the cool water refreshing her spirit. Chayton knelt nearby, his eyes scanning the horizon. They spoke of their plans, of what they hoped to find at the camp. Chayton was determined to learn the truth about his sister, to uncover the fate that had befallen her. Lila was equally committed, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. Their journey was not without its challenges. The land was vast, and the path was often difficult. But they were resourceful, finding ways to navigate the terrain with skill and patience. Each day brought new lessons, new opportunities to grow stronger. As they traveled, they encountered other travelers on the road. Some were friendly, offering advice and stories of their own adventures. Others were wary, their eyes cautious as they passed by. Lila and Chayton took it all in, each encounter a reminder of the diversity of the world around them. The days passed, and the landscape continued to change. They moved through valleys and across plains, each step bringing them closer to their destination. Lila found herself growing more confident, her skills honed by Chayton's guidance. She had learned to read the signs of the land, to find food and water where others might see nothing. She had learned to trust her instincts, to move with purpose and clarity. These were lessons she would carry with her, skills that would serve her well in the future. Chayton watched her progress with quiet pride. He saw the strength in her, the determination that mirrored his own. They were two souls on a journey, each learning from the other. Their bond was a testament to the power of resilience and hope. As they approached the area where the camp was rumored to be, the tension grew. They knew they were close, and the air was thick with anticipation. Lila felt a mix of excitement and fear, aware of the danger but driven by the need for answers. They decided to approach cautiously, aware that they might be watched. The camp was hidden, its location known only to a few. But Chayton was skilled in the art of tracking, and his instincts guided them forward. As they neared the camp, the sounds of voices and activity reached their ears. Lila felt her heart quicken, the reality of their mission settling in. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the culmination of their journey so far. Chayton signaled for them to stop, his eyes scanning the area. He pointed out a vantage point, a place where they could observe without being seen. Together, they crept forward, their movements silent and deliberate. From their hiding spot, they could see the camp below. It was a bustling place, filled with people of all ages. Some worked, their faces weary and resigned. Others stood watch, their eyes cold and calculating. It was a place of labor and exploitation, just as the trader had described. Lila's heart ached at the sight, but she remained focused. They needed to find out if Chayton's sister was here, if there was any hope of reuniting them. It was a daunting task, but they were ready to face it together. As they watched, a plan began to form. They would wait for nightfall, using the cover of darkness to move closer. Chayton would search for signs of his sister, while Lila kept watch. It was a risky plan, but it was their best chance. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the camp settled into a restless quiet. Lila and Chayton prepared to move, their hearts steady with purpose. They were ready to face whatever lay ahead, driven by hope and the promise of answers. Together, they descended towards the camp, their steps sure and silent. The night was their ally, the darkness a cloak that shielded them from prying eyes. They were two souls on a mission, united by a bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. As they moved forward, the world seemed to hold its breath. The path was uncertain, but they faced it with courage and determination. Whatever the outcome, they knew they would face it together, their hearts guided by hope and the strength of their bond. The night wrapped around Lila and Chayton as they moved closer to the camp. The darkness was thick, but their eyes had adjusted, and they moved with a quiet purpose. The camp was alive with the sounds of people and the occasional crackle of a fire. It was a place of hard labor, and Lila felt the weight of it in the air. They kept to the shadows, their movements silent and deliberate. Chayton led the way, his eyes scanning for any sign of his sister. Lila stayed close, her heart steady and focused. This was their chance to find answers, to bring Chayton's sister home if she was here. As they approached the edge of the camp, they paused to observe. The camp was surrounded by makeshift fences, and guards patrolled the perimeter. It was clear that escape was not easy, and those inside were kept under tight control. Lila's heart ached for the people trapped here, forced to work under harsh conditions. Chayton signaled for them to move forward. They crept closer, their eyes searching for any sign of Chayton's sister. The camp was large, with tents and shelters scattered throughout. It was a place of desperation, but also of resilience. As they moved through the camp, they listened to the voices around them. People spoke in hushed tones, their words filled with exhaustion and hope. Lila felt a connection to them, a shared understanding of struggle and survival. Chayton's focus was unwavering. He scanned each face, looking for the one he had been searching for all these years. His heart was heavy with anticipation, but he remained calm and determined. Lila admired his strength, his ability to keep moving even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Suddenly, a noise caught their attention. A group of people was being moved, herded like cattle by the guards. Among them was a young woman, her face weary but her spirit unbroken. Chayton's breath caught in his throat. It was her, his sister. Lila saw the recognition in Chayton's eyes. She felt a surge of emotion, a mix of relief and urgency. They needed to act quickly, to get her out before they were discovered. But the camp was heavily guarded, and they needed a plan. Chayton's mind raced, assessing their options. They needed a distraction, something to draw the guards away from his sister. He turned to Lila, his expression filled with determination. They would create a diversion, using the chaos to slip away unnoticed. Lila nodded, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She trusted Chayton completely, knowing that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. They retreated to the edge of the camp, whispering their plan in hushed tones. The night was their ally, the darkness a cloak that shielded them from view. Chayton gathered a small pile of dry leaves and twigs, creating a makeshift fire. Lila found a stick, wrapping a piece of cloth around one end. They were ready. With a spark, the fire roared to life, the flames licking at the night sky. It was a signal, a beacon that would draw the guards' attention. Lila and Chayton moved quickly, slipping back into the shadows as shouts filled the air. The camp erupted into chaos, the guards scrambling to contain the fire. It was the distraction they needed, a moment of confusion that opened a path to freedom. Chayton and Lila moved swiftly, their steps sure and silent. They reached the group where Chayton's sister was held. She looked up, her eyes meeting Chayton's with a mix of disbelief and hope. He nodded, a silent promise that they would get her out. Lila helped to cut the bindings that held her, her fingers quick and sure. Together, they moved through the camp, the chaos around them creating a cover for their escape. Lila's heart raced, her mind focused on the path ahead. They were so close, and she would not let anything stop them now. As they reached the edge of the camp, Chayton's sister stumbled. Lila caught her, offering support as they pushed forward. The night was alive with noise, but they were almost free. She could feel it in the air, the promise of a new beginning. With a final burst of energy, they broke through the perimeter, leaving the camp behind. The forest embraced them, the trees offering shelter from prying eyes. They were safe, at least for the moment. Lila and Chayton paused to catch their breath, their hearts pounding with the thrill of escape. Chayton's sister clung to him, her relief palpable. It was a moment of triumph, a victory against all odds. They moved deeper into the forest, putting distance between themselves and the camp. The night was quiet again, the chaos left behind. Lila felt a sense of peace settle over her, a calm that came from knowing they had succeeded. Chayton's sister spoke softly, her voice filled with gratitude and exhaustion. She was safe now, reunited with her brother after so many years. Lila watched their reunion, her heart full of joy for them both. As they settled for the night, Lila felt a sense of accomplishment. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. She knew there were challenges still to come, but for now they had each other. The night wrapped around them, a blanket of stars above. Lila lay back, watching the sky, her heart filled with hope. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, their journey guided by the strength of their bond and the promise of a brighter future. The morning sun filtered through the trees, waking Lila, Chayton, and his sister. The events of the previous night felt like a dream, but the reality of their escape was undeniable. They had succeeded in freeing Chayton's sister, and the relief was palpable. Chayton's sister, named Aiyana, was grateful to be with her brother again. Her eyes were filled with a mix of exhaustion and hope. She had been in the camp for too long, enduring hard labor and harsh conditions. But now, surrounded by the forest and the people who cared for her, she felt a sense of peace. Lila watched the siblings with a warm heart. Their reunion was a testament to the strength of their bond, a bond that had survived years of separation. She felt honored to have played a part in bringing them back together. After a simple breakfast, they discussed their plan. They needed to move quickly, to put as much distance between themselves and the camp as possible. The guards would soon realize that Aiyana was gone, and pursuit was likely. Chayton was determined to get his sister to safety, back to their people. He spoke of the Apache lands, a place where they could live in peace. Lila listened, knowing that their journey was far from over. They had come this far, but there were still challenges ahead. As they set off, Aiyana shared her story. She spoke of the camp, of the people she had met there. Many were like her, taken from their homes and forced into labor. Her voice was steady, but Lila could hear the pain beneath her words. Aiyana also spoke of the resilience of the people she had known. Despite their circumstances, they had found ways to support each other, to keep hope alive. Her strength was evident, a mirror of the determination Lila had seen in Chayton. Their path led them through dense forests and over rocky hills. The landscape was challenging, but Chayton's knowledge of the land guided them forward. Lila and Aiyana followed, their steps sure and steady. As they traveled, they spoke of the future. Aiyana dreamed of returning to her people, of finding a place where she could heal and rebuild her life. Lila shared her own dreams of restoring her family's ranch, of creating a new beginning. Their stories were different, yet they were bound by a shared understanding of loss and resilience. Lila felt a deep connection to Aiyana, a kinship that transcended words. They were both survivors, each facing their own challenges with courage and hope. The journey was not without its dangers. The threat of pursuit loomed over them, a constant reminder to stay vigilant. They moved quickly, using the cover of the forest to remain hidden. Chayton was watchful, his senses attuned to any sign of danger. As the days passed, they drew closer to the Apache lands. The air felt different here, charged with a sense of belonging. Chayton spoke of the land with reverence, a place where his people had lived for generations. Aiyana's spirits lifted as they neared their destination. She spoke of the traditions and stories she had missed, the culture that was her own. Lila listened, fascinated by the richness of their heritage. She felt a deep respect for the strength and resilience of the Apache people. Their journey also brought them into contact with others. They met travelers on the road, some of whom shared news and stories. One evening, they encountered a group of settlers who had also suffered at the hands of men like the ones who ran the camp. The settlers spoke of their struggles, of the challenges they faced in a new and unfamiliar land. They, too, were seeking a place to call home, a place where they could build a future. Lila felt a kinship with them, a shared desire for peace and stability. As they continued their journey, Lila thought of her own path. Her dreams of rebuilding her family's ranch were stronger than ever. She knew it would take time and effort, but she was ready to face the challenge. With each step, she felt more confident, more capable of achieving her goals. Chayton and Aiyana's presence was a source of strength. Their journey had intertwined with hers, creating a bond that would not be easily broken. Together, they had faced adversity and emerged stronger for it. The landscape changed as they approached the Apache lands. The air was filled with the scent of pine and earth, a reminder of the land's enduring beauty. Lila felt a sense of anticipation, a feeling that they were nearing the end of one journey and the beginning of another. As they reached the edge of the Apache territory, Chayton paused. He looked at his sister, his eyes filled with emotion. They had come so far, and now they were home. Aiyana's face lit up with joy, a smile breaking through the weariness. Lila watched the siblings, her heart full. They had achieved what they had set out to do, and the sense of accomplishment was profound. She felt a deep connection to this land, a place that had become a part of her journey. As they crossed into the Apache lands, Lila knew that their journey was not over. There were still challenges to face, dreams to pursue. But for now, they had reached a place of safety, a place where they could rest and heal. The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. Lila felt a sense of peace settle over her, a calm that came from knowing they had succeeded. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, their bond a testament to the power of hope and resilience. With the promise of a new beginning, they stepped forward, ready to embrace the future. The journey had changed them, but it had also brought them closer, united by a shared purpose and a dream of a better tomorrow. The morning in the Apache lands was serene. The air was crisp, and the sky stretched wide and clear. Lila, Chayton, and Aiyana awoke to the sounds of the land around them, a gentle chorus of nature welcoming them to a new day. The sense of peace was palpable, a stark contrast to the tension and danger they had faced in the past. Their arrival in Apache territory had been met with warmth and relief. Chayton and Aiyana's people welcomed them with open arms, offering food and shelter. Lila felt the warmth of their hospitality, a kindness that eased the weariness of their long journey. The days that followed were filled with a sense of healing. Aiyana began to recover, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of her homeland. She spent time with her people, sharing stories of her time in the camp and listening to the tales of those who had stayed behind. Her spirit, once burdened by captivity, grew lighter with each passing day. Chayton, too, found solace in the embrace of his community. He had accomplished what he had set out to do, reuniting with his sister and bringing her home. The weight of his long search lifted, replaced by a sense of fulfillment and peace. He spoke with the elders, sharing his experiences and listening to their wisdom. Lila watched them, her heart full of gratitude. She had been a part of their journey, and their success felt like her own. She had learned much from Chayton and Aiyana, lessons about resilience, hope, and the strength of the human spirit. These were lessons she would carry with her as she moved forward. As the days turned into weeks, Lila knew it was time to focus on her own dreams. The thought of rebuilding her family's ranch filled her with determination. She imagined the fields coming to life again, the cattle grazing under the open sky. It was a vision that fueled her resolve, a dream she was ready to pursue. Chayton and Aiyana understood her decision. They had walked alongside her, witnessing her strength and courage. They offered their support, knowing that the bond they had formed would remain, even as their paths diverged. Before departing, Lila spent time with the Apache people, learning more about their culture and traditions. She was welcomed into their circle, treated as family. The experience enriched her, deepening her respect for their way of life. On her last evening in the Apache lands, the community gathered for a farewell gathering. The air was filled with the sound of drums and laughter, a celebration of unity and friendship. Lila felt a mix of emotions, sadness at leaving but also excitement for the journey ahead. As the night wore on, Chayton approached Lila. His expression was thoughtful, his eyes filled with gratitude. He spoke of their journey, of the obstacles they had overcome. He thanked her for her friendship, for standing by him and Aiyana when they needed it most. Lila smiled, her heart full. She thanked Chayton for his guidance and support, for teaching her the skills and strength she would need in the future. Their journey together had changed them both, leaving them stronger and more resilient. Aiyana joined them, her face lit by the glow of the fire. She hugged Lila tightly, expressing her gratitude for the rescue and the friendship that had followed. Lila felt a deep connection to her, a bond that would endure despite the distance between them. As the gathering came to a close, Lila stood with Chayton and Aiyana, looking out at the stars. The night was clear, the sky a vast expanse of possibilities. She felt a sense of closure, a readiness to face the next chapter of her life. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke, Lila prepared to leave. Her heart was light, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Chayton and Aiyana stood with her, offering final words of encouragement and support. Lila took one last look at the land that had been her refuge, a place of healing and growth. She felt a sense of gratitude for the experiences she had gained, the friendships she had formed. With a deep breath, she set off, her steps sure and steady. The journey back to her family's land was long, but Lila felt ready. She carried with her the lessons of her journey, the strength of the bonds she had formed. The road ahead was uncertain, but she faced it with courage and hope. As she neared her family's ranch, the memories of her past came flooding back. She remembered her parents, their love and dedication to the land. She felt their presence with her, guiding her forward. The ranch was much as she had left it, the fields overgrown and the buildings in need of repair. But Lila saw beyond the disrepair, envisioning the vibrant life she would restore. It was a daunting task, but one she embraced with open arms. With determination in her heart, Lila began the work of rebuilding. She cleared the fields, repaired the fences, and tended to the land. The work was hard, but it was fulfilling, each day bringing her closer to her dream. The community, once distant, began to take notice. They saw Lila's efforts, her dedication to restoring her family's legacy. Slowly, they came to offer help and support, recognizing the strength and resilience she embodied. As the seasons changed, Lila's hard work bore fruit. The fields flourished, the cattle thrived, and the ranch came alive once more. It was a testament to her perseverance, a reflection of the journey she had taken. Lila stood on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The land stretched before her, a testament to her journey and the strength she had discovered within herself. Her heart was full, her spirit unbroken. The wind carried a whisper of promise, a reminder that her story was just beginning. She had faced adversity and emerged stronger, guided by hope and the bonds she had formed. The journey had changed her, but it had also prepared her for whatever lay ahead. As the stars appeared in the sky, Lila felt a sense of peace. She was home, surrounded by the land she loved, ready to embrace the future with courage and hope. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had led her to this moment, a new beginning, filled with endless possibilities. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.